How-Do-We relationship is one of the most complex, yet rewarding Yuri experiences out there. It's a story beginning with heartbreak and a certain confusion regarding the true nature of relationships, but by the end, it becomes a story where problems that were so stifling so long ago are no longer acknowledged. Today, we're going to be exploring How-Do-We relationship and why there will never be another Yuri like it, at least for a very long time. Before we begin, if you're new here, my name is Whadasha. I make a lot of Yuri content just like this. If you enjoy it, subscribe. We're trying to hit 10K by the end of the year. Memberships are also up on the channel. Check those out. With that said, let's begin. There are two major reasons why I believe we will never see another Yuri like How-Do-We relationship, and for the sake of keeping this video straightforward, I'll split them up by sections. Section 1, Contents, which will cover the actual contents of the story and what makes it so unique, and Section 2, Luck. We'll talk about it when we get there. But let's dive into Section 1. How-Do-We relationship primarily focuses on the life of two college freshmen, Seiko Sawatari and Miwa Inuzuka. From the beginning of the story, there's a certain conflict with Miwa. She knows that she likes women, but at the same time, she knows how difficult it is to find true love. But by pure chance, the first friend that she meets in college seems to be the same way. Whether it be due to the unusual circumstances, or because the opportunity simply presented itself, Seiko and Miwa would begin dating. However, this relationship would be everything a relationship should not be. There'd be a constant lack of communication and oftentimes certain interference from third parties that would negatively impact them both. But eventually, the relationship would come to an abrupt end in chapter 34. Now, don't worry, I don't intend to fully summarize How-Do-We relationship to you. It's here where we're going to explore the first point, which is content. Following the breakup between Miwa and Seiko, the two pursue entirely different relationships. For 97 chapters. Yeah. Now, this alone is really one of the main points. Separating the characters in a manga isn't anything foreign. We've seen that a lot. Some characters will have arguments, some may temporarily break up, but what stands out is the sheer length. Let me put this into perspective for you guys by bringing in some examples. The original Citrus is 41.5 chapters long, and Citrus Plus, which is still ongoing, is 38 chapters long. In total, that is 79.5 chapters. The original Kase-san is 25 chapters long, and Kase-san Yamada is 65 and ongoing, bringing it to 90 chapters on the dot. Bloom Into You is 45.5 chapters long. Now, compare that to How-Do-We relationship, where Seiko and Miwa are separated for 97 chapters, almost double that average. And that's not even the full story. The manga continues all the way to chapter 133, making it significantly longer than almost every other big Yuri title, at least in the manga department. This is something that wouldn't leave my head while I was reading this manga. Tamiful was allowed a 133 chapter Yuri manga where the characters separate and pursue other people for an extended period of time. The story relies on you, the audience, to trust the developments. If you wanted to drop the story because Seiko and Miwa were no longer together, that would be completely fair, and that's the biggest risk of doing something like this. It's for that reason why you don't see many other creative decisions like this in manga. Now again, you may see small separations, like for example, Adachi and Shimamura's fallout in Shimamura's Sword, or Mei leaving Yuzu from chapter 35 to 41.5 in Citrus. But it's always short to make sure that the viewer doesn't lose interest. Separating the characters for not just 50 chapters, not 70, but 90 was a risk, and needless to say, risks like that in the Yuri space don't come around often. So if you wanted to recreate this to any extent, you would need a miracle. This segues us into section 2, luck. Now, what exactly do I mean by luck? Well, it's certainly not anything as complex as you're imagining, I bet. I mean, luck. How-Do-We relationship got lucky? In an interview with Tamiful on 47 News, after the reporter directly acknowledges the unusual structure of How-Do-We relationship, Tamiful replies that the number of volumes was more than expected. In other words, the story wasn't designed to continue for this long from the start. It survived on trust and reception. That is something very rare in the Yuri space. I feel like often many Yuri just abruptly finish. I know 2 Yuri off the top of my head that just one day disappeared. Not many are told, hey, take more volumes, you're doing good. That is a luxury reserved to what I imagine to be only the most well-received Yuri manga. And the fact that How Do We Relationship was lucky enough to reach 12 volumes is nothing short of luck. No matter how you look at it, this story was a gamble. If people didn't trust the process, trust that after everything the wait would pay off, this could have very well been a dumpster fire, and I mean that. Now, I would also like to state this before I get comment after comment. By no means am I trying to undercut Tammyful's skill, because it would be blasphemous to call the entirety of How Do We Relationship lucky. How Do We Relationship is very well executed. That's something that Tammyful absolutely nailed to a T, but I believe that the reception was nothing short of luck. And last but not least, I have one final section, something that I didn't list above. The true reason why there will never be another Yuri like How Do We Relationship is because there will never be another Tammyful. I wholeheartedly believe that. In the same interview with 47 News, Tammyful says something very interesting that I want to relay to you guys. I wanted people to read it not because it's a Yuri manga or because it's an LGBTQ work, but because it's an entry point where, while reading the manga, they happen to think, oh, this is about two women dating. Sexual minorities don't live their lives as educational materials for someone. They live their lives as normal, connected to everyone else. These are people you might imagine having a relationship you might imagine. I wanted to portray it with a nuance that suggests the target gender isn't the opposite sex, but that's why when the first volume was published, Watanabe and I decided not to advertise How Do We Relationship as a Yuri manga. Though How Do We Relationship itself can be complicated in its certain portrayal of events, at its core, it's a work with a very straightforward goal that Tammyful has reiterated time and time again, whether in interviews or afterwards. It's simply meant to be a story about everyday romance. It's a story that isn't meant to exclude, but rather something that can be consumed and appreciated by everyone. A lot of stories set out to be that, to be an everyday portrayal of romance, but the truth is, they're not. Not many stories faithfully tackle the murky, uncomfortable feelings that comes with relationships, and that's really what separates Tammyful from the bunch. She never cherry-picked what's realistic and what isn't. She included everything: the trauma, the heartbreak, the conflict, and most notably, the final straw, time and time again. So why exactly is How Do We Relationship one of a kind? Why will we not see another Yuri like How Do We Relationship for a very long time? Truthfully, it's not just the risks or even the luck. It falls down to an author with a very straightforward vision that never wavered. Even when bringing something different into a niche that was already so established, she continued with what she wanted to do, what she wanted to see. She carved a hole into a space already filled, forcefully bringing in something new. That is Tammyful. Now, is it all around fair to say that there will never be another Yuri manga like How Do We Relationship ever? Absolutely not, because despite what the title of this video says, that's just not true. I think that in the future, or maybe even the near future, a story like How Do We Relationship may emerge. But the path to a story like that won't be easy. If it was, then, well, I'd probably be talking about those stories just as much as How Do We Relationship. I know this video may be a little different, but this is something that has been on my mind for a while. I don't think that I've ever openly said this on this channel before, but when I'm reading a manga or reading a light novel or something like that, I always love tuning into the afterwords. I think that more often than not, authors have some very important things to say, and Tammyful was just one of those authors that caught my attention. I know I already said this in the video, but Tammyful's openness about wanting to create a story about that sort of grievance from relationships, a story that isn't so cleanly cut, something about that was, I want to say, captivating to me. The fact that it wasn't just words, and that she went and actually executed it, I think that was the cherry on top. You guys seem to, for the most part, enjoy these How Do We Relationship videos, so I want to keep providing, even if they're smaller, more opinion-based videos like these. I know I've been a little bit absent as of late. I've been wrapped up in some things in my personal life, but for now we're back. If you haven't already, make sure that you're subscribed. I make a lot of content like this, and I'll catch all you guys later. Thank you so much for watching.